Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to participate in today's public engagement session. My name is Eric Chansey, and I'm with the Wake County Office of Student Assignment. I will be your host for today's session, and Susan Pulliam from our Office of Student Assignment will be our presenter for this session. Our moderators for today's session will be Sandra Chapman and Jimmy Spizzato from the Office of Student Assignment. We're going to record the session. This recording will be posted on YouTube and linked on our website for those who missed the session or want to watch it again. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. As a reminder, today's session was prepared by the Office of Student Assignment. This session is designed to help you learn more about the student assignment planning process and Board Policy 4150, explore current enrollment and facility trends, and share your questions and feedback to help inform the development of the next district enrollment plan. Before we begin, let me go over some logistics. Our session will last for no more than an hour and a half. We will begin with a presentation and conclude by responding to questions from today's session. We often are asked if your feedback actually impacts the planning process. The short answer is yes. Feedback from previous planning session cycles has led to an expansion of the stability rules so that more students are eligible to remain assigned to their current school following a reassignment, changing the enrollment strategy for new schools so that a mixture of new developments and existing communities are assigned to new schools, which slows the rate at which new schools fill up, and other improvements to the planning process. Your input during this phase of the planning process truly informs the development of enrollment plans. All of the information we will share during this evening's session, along with other tools and resources to help you better understand the planning process, can be found on our district website. We recognize that now and throughout the session, you may have questions for the presenter or the planning team. To capture your questions, we will be using the Q&A feature within Google Meet. To access this feature from a computer, please click on the three shapes in the toolbar on your screen. If you are using a mobile device, select the three dots first, then select the icon with the three shapes. You should then see a Q&A feature identified by a question mark icon. To ensure your questions are anonymous, our host and moderators will be monitoring the Q&A for questions and capturing them throughout this evening's session. Once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that means that your question has been successfully captured by our moderators, and you do not need to resubmit your question. We will make every effort to respond to your questions toward the end of our session. In addition, we will use your questions to update the FAQ portion of our website. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. In addition, we are asking that you contribute to the larger community discussion related to enrollment planning via Thought Exchange. The Thought Exchange will remain open through July 31st. After it has closed, we will summarize the feedback received through the Thought Exchange and will share this summary on the assignment planning website. No one will be personally identified in the summary. And now, I will turn things over to our presenter. Susan?
Eric, thank you. Thank you for getting us started. And for those of you that have joined us, we really appreciate you spending time with us today to learn more about the assignment planning process and to help us develop the next enrollment plan. To ensure that you have a better understanding of how this year's proposal will be developed, we want to just take a few moments to review our planning process. So to start with, we'll look at the policy that guides this planning process, and that is Board Policy 4150. It directs staff to balance, to the extent reasonable, the goals and factors identified by four main pillars. These are student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. Each of these has a specific definition within Policy 4150. So to help you better understand how each of these pillars are defined in policy and how staff is asked to balance all of them, we're going to show you a brief video and then we'll continue with our presentation.
Understanding student assignment. It's no secret that our school district is growing, and it's growing fast. That means each year we need to address overcrowded schools and often need to open new schools to keep up with this growth. To state the obvious, we may have to reduce the enrollment at an existing school or fill new schools with students. This is done through the annual student assignment process. To best understand when and where new growth is coming in our district, we conduct an annual enrollment forecast. This forecast helps us look ahead up to 10 years and project enrollment growth throughout the district. This information helps us update our capital improvement plan and to make more informed decisions related to school assignments. Each year, some students are assigned to one of our new schools or reassigned to an existing school. This ensures we have balanced school populations across the district. We know families love their schools and that student assignment decisions can be worrisome. That's why we want to be completely transparent in how we make them. Our school board has established 4 pillars that guide each and every student assignment decision. Here's what they mean and how they work together. Student achievement. We want all of our schools to provide the best academic opportunities for our students. This pillar compels us to think about whether a student assignment plan can help reduce high concentrations of poverty or low-performing students at some of our schools. Stability. Essentially, we try to keep as many children at their current school through the exit grade as possible. When reassignments are necessary, we provide the opportunity for some students to submit a stability transfer request and stay at their current school through the exit grade. Operational efficiency. This pillar is about making sure all of our schools and transportation resources are at their best use. Overcrowded schools are a problem. Classrooms packed with too many students are one thing. But then there are the endless carpool lines, bathroom facilities that can't comfortably accommodate everyone, and having to start lunch when most people are still working on breakfast. On the flip side, having under-enrolled schools is an inefficient use of public resources, particularly when there are crowded schools nearby. Proximity. Okay, this one can be a little tricky. In a perfect world, houses would be built in neat little rows on a predictable timeline and at a slow and steady rate. As it is, we live in an imperfect world where lots and lots of homes pop up in one area, while growth is slight or non-existent in others. For this reason, it is impossible to send every child to their most proximate school unless we want some of our schools bursting at the seams while others are half empty. That said, this pillar states that we will send students to schools within a reasonable distance. Often, the difference between the most proximate school and the next most proximate school is no more than a couple of miles. Please remember that we must consider all 4 of these pillars when making assignment decisions. There is no priority among the 4 that applies in every situation. It's a balancing act that ultimately helps us come up with the best possible plan for everyone. Thank you for working with us to ensure our school system continues to serve all students well. Understanding student assignment.
Sorry about that restart. So hopefully that helps to explain the board policy. In addition to the policy that guides all of our work, we also follow roughly a 6-step process that starts with the annual forecast that you heard about in the video. For the 26-27 enrollment planning process, we've already completed the first 3 steps in this cycle and are now actively in step 4. Please notice that the cycle for 1 year's plan overlaps the next. A specific example is that although we already are working on the development of the 26-27 enrollment plan, we're still working through the final step of the 25-26 planning cycle. So essentially, we are constantly working to develop and implement plans that support the efficient operation of our schools. Let's take a few minutes to walk through each of the steps, and I do mean this briefly, so that you can just have a good overview of how each of the steps work together. The first step is the presentation of the annual enrollment forecast, and this forecast provides both a 1- and 10-year projection for enrollment growth in the district. Even though the enrollment forecast provides a 10-year outlook, it is updated annually to account for any changes in residential development patterns, home sales, birth rates, and other areas that can impact the forecast. However, simply knowing how many students the district needs to be prepared to serve can be very, very helpful. It's more helpful for us in the planning department to know where and within and throughout the district that enrollment growth is expected, particularly as we're developing our annual enrollment plans. This map depicts the projected change in total student population residing in various areas across the district. As you review the map, we hope that you'll notice that most of the areas show projected enrollment increases, and that those are much larger than the ones that are showing any decreases in enrollment in any particular areas. So it highlights that we continue to be a growing district and that we are expecting more students in areas that are already sort of high growth and may already have full schools. It's also important to note that this growth is not happening evenly across the district. Some areas are projected to see significant increases. So as you can see, we've got some larger growth areas here and throughout the east, while others are showing some stability of enrollment, meaning that those areas probably are built out from a residential development standpoint or have slowed the rate at which they're adding new homes to that area. In case you're just now joining us, I wanted to remind everyone that all the information we're sharing tonight, as well as lots of other resources that may be helpful for you in learning more about the planning process, can be found on the district's website, including a full copy of that enrollment forecast report that was presented to the board earlier this year. Also, if you're just now joining us, we are using the Q&A feature here in the Google Meet. So if you're using a computer, you're looking for those 3 shapes on the bottom of your screen to access it. If you're on a mobile device, you're looking for those 3 dots, then that'll get you to the 3 shapes. And ultimately, you're looking for that question mark to identify the Q&A feature. We will keep all of your questions anonymous, which means we will copy those questions and capture them into a collection document. So if you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that's your hint that our moderators have effectively captured your question, and that we'll get to it towards the end of the session. So the next step in the process, once we know what the enrollment forecast is, not only for the coming school year, but that 10-year outlook, is to look at our crowding that we're projected to have for the very next school year. So in this case, we're looking at the 25-26 projected crowding. And here you see a few steps that we go through to get to that point. Here you're going to see a quick look at the projected crowding for our elementary schools throughout the district based on that annual forecast. Just for some context, the darker orange or red regions indicate elementary schools that are projected to be at or above 110% for the coming school year. So as you can see, some of these are in those same areas where we saw those large blue arrows, which means we already have crowded schools and we're going to see continued enrollment growth in those same regions. Here you see a quick overview of the middle schools for 25-26, and as you can see, it's a little bit better distributed. We still have 2 middle schools that are in that really overcrowded stage of being at or over 110% for next school year. And at the high school level, it's getting a little bit better every year. We are opening up Felton Grove High School this coming school year, which is in that general region, and that has provided a significant amount of relief for schools like Apex Friendship and Apex High School, which were previously some of our most crowded schools. Again, this is how you submit questions if you have any questions for us throughout the session today. The third step in our process then is reviewing the capital improvement plan, or the CIP, including any adjustments that have been made during the annual review process for the CIP. The chart you see here shows the projected opening years for all approved new school projects in the 7-year CIP. It is a rolling 7-year capital improvement plan. So each year we add 1 more year to the out years, and we take care of the things that are already complete. I do want to pause and acknowledge that there's an asterisk located on many locations throughout this particular chart to indicate that All of our projects in the capital improvement plan, particularly new schools and major renovation projects, do have the potential for completion date changes based on market volatility, scope changes, changes in the design or construction schedules for these projects. So essentially, we are monitoring the progress of these construction projects closely, and we adjust recommendations for the annual enrollment plan when needed. We have received questions, hey, is it ever possible that one of those projects could finish earlier than indicated? And that's going to 99% of the time that would be a no. What would most likely happen is that it slips and takes a little bit longer to complete the project than originally projected. Here, I just want to highlight that the green schools are the ones that are going to be opening for the 25-26 school year, and the board has already approved plans for those campuses. It's this Hilltop Needmore Elementary that'll be the only new school projected to open for 26-27 that will definitely need to be included in our enrollment planning process for this year. And here, just to give you a distribution of where these schools are located. So the green schools are those that I highlighted a moment ago. Those are the schools that are opening for 25-26. 2 of those are multi-track year-round schools, so they'll be opening in July. And the other 2 are traditional schools, 1 elementary and 1 high school. And so those will be opening in August of this year. Here's the location of Hilltop Needmore Elementary, which again is projected to open for 26-27. And here you see those other schools that were named that are projected for the out years. You will notice that Little Creek Elementary is not circled or highlighted. It's a school that has been named by the board. However, it hasn't yet made it onto the capital improvement plan. So we do expect it to show up in a future revision to that 7-year timeline. In addition to new school construction, the capital improvement plan also includes major renovation projects, and for many of our existing schools. This chart outlines which schools have received funding for major renovation projects, including the year the project is projected to be completed. Many of these projects will result in an increased capacity for the school, which may impact assignment plans. When developing each year's enrollment plan, we do evaluate whether the additional capacity at these schools, once renovated, can be used to alleviate overcrowding at nearby schools. Please keep in mind that there are other minor renovation projects that you don't see listed here that also may be underway during this time period and could potentially increase the capacity of an existing school. So we're going to constantly monitor our new school construction, our major renovations, and our minor renovations to determine if any new capacity is coming online that we could take advantage of and maybe make some changes in assignments during an enrollment planning process to help alleviate crowding throughout the district. Here you'll notice that Swift Creek Elementary is the one school that is projected to be complete for the 26-27 school year. So we will be looking at that. What you don't see on this list is a minor renovation project at Fuquay-Varina Elementary School. And so we'll be monitoring that project as well to see if they should be included in the 26-27 enrollment plan. Here you see a distribution of the schools that are receiving those major renovation projects. And just for clarification, major renovation generally means maybe a tear down and rebuild. It's a massive refresh for that campus. So they're big, big construction projects. And again, here's the location of Swift Creek. The others you can see distributed throughout the district that will be getting those major renovations over the next 7 years. Again, if you have questions throughout today's session, please use the Q&A feature. And now we're ready to start jumping into a little bit about this point in the process, the enrollment planning process. Once the forecast, the projected crowding, and the capital improvement updates have been reviewed, we are ready to begin the process of preparing the annual enrollment plan. The first part of this step or phase is to initiate public engagement activities. And so you're participating in those. We're capturing thoughts and ideas from families and community members to help inform the development of the next enrollment plan. For this year's plan, these sessions began in March and will continue through the end of this week. For a complete summary of the thoughts and ideas captured from families and community members during this year's public engagement sessions, we do encourage you to visit our assignment planning website. The next part of this step or phase of the planning process is to engage the board in a review of their annual goals. We met with the board earlier this week to have that initial discussion, and a recording of that presentation along with the discussion is available on our assignment planning website as well as the district's YouTube channel. There's our favorite feature. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to add them to the Q&A feature. Once the board does approve a plan, and it's going to usually be around November, we then as a district start to look at which schools still have significant crowding concerns that could not have been addressed by the approved assignment plan. Here you see a list of the schools with board approved caps, meaning they're so crowded that some families that are new to the district that move into the attendance areas for these schools may not be able to attend this school and may attend a designated overflow school. District transportation, of course, is provided to those options. The district's goal over time is to reduce this list. Currently, there are 22 schools on the list, and we're working very diligently to identify ways to get more and more schools off of this list so that they can serve all of the families that live in their base attendance area. And the final step of the process, so that one that I showed you earlier where we're sort of finishing that step from last year's plan while we're starting work on this year's plan, is to determine if any schools that are going to continue to be overcrowded or underutilized could be better supported perhaps by the changing of the operational calendar of the school. This is part of last year's enrollment plan process, and it's currently underway. The next enrollment plan, of course, will then be informed by any decisions that the board makes. For context, more information about that can be found not only on our assignment planning website, but also on our school choice portion of our website. But you can certainly find more information about those continuing conversations. If you are in the eastern part of the county, the current conversation is around the calendar for Lake Myra Elementary, and the board is asking staff to do some more information sessions. So there'll be one hosted next week, and final presentations will be brought to the board early in June to have final discussions about whether or not that school should have a change in calendar. So we hope that the information that we've shared with you about our planning process, although quick and brief, has provided some clarity to the overall process and all of the steps that we go through to get prepared for the development of the enrollment plan and then to respond to those approved enrollment plans. In addition, before we begin to get to your questions, because we're almost there, I just want to turn things over to our host, Dr. Eric Chansey, to give you just a few more pieces of logistical information, and then we'll dive into our question and answer period. Eric?
I am back. I know we've reviewed a lot of information, and I'd like to address as many of your questions as possible. Please take a few moments and post any questions or comments using the Q&A feature. As you are posting questions, we will review questions that were submitted during the session and start with those. We definitely encourage you to continue to contribute to the district-wide thought exchange, and that'll remain open through the end of July. We also welcome you to bookmark our assignment planning website and visit it regularly for updated information and to find ways to participate in future engagement activities. And finally, we recommend that you tune into board work sessions over the next few months to hear updates on the public engagement process and to review the initial draft of the 2026-27 enrollment plan. All right, so at this point, I'm looking for any questions that may have been submitted, and I don't seem to have any, at least as of yet.
While we're waiting, I can address a few questions that we do get regularly during this cycle, especially from those in-person sessions that we've already held. A lot of questions we receive are about which students, if they are reassigned, would be eligible for stability transfers. So just to clarify, in our district, we have a term called a stability transfer, and that's a specific transfer that has specific rules that each year that an enrollment plan is approved, the board will designate what those stability rules are. In the past several years, we've had more generous stability rules, meaning more students across more grade levels have been eligible to remain at their current school despite their address being assigned to a different school. Historically, and by historically, I want to say near history, recent history, we've seen the board be somewhat generous with the opening of new elementary schools, allowing both rising 4th and 5th grade students to have that ability to get a stability transfer and stay at their current school and not have to go to the new school. In addition, if they have any younger siblings, they're also eligible to join them and remain with them all the way through 5th grade. So the board's really tried to balance providing individual families with that type of stability. The only downside is that we cannot provide district transportation to those transfers, but we are able to give families that flexibility to have more time at their current school and maybe not necessarily have to go to the new school. However, for new elementary schools, rising kindergarten, first, second, and third grade students, the year that the schools open that don't have those rising fourth or fifth grade siblings would be expected to attend the new elementary school under the new assignment plan. And since we're not opening any schools at any other levels, I don't know that we need to address middle school and high school in this session, but just to give it some context about how the stability rules work. Are there other questions, Eric, that we generally received in some of our public engagement sessions?
Many of the questions that I recall from other sessions largely revolve around really school-based decisions that have to be made. How will teachers be hired? How will, all of kind of the logistics of the
Sure.
site-based situations be handled?
Certainly. I will say as a district, that's another area where we've made some improvements. One of the things that the board has done is change the timing in which they hire principals for those new schools in particular, so that they're hired usually around December or January, or at least named around December or January before the school opens. So it gives them almost 6 full months to start building all that they need to for their school, getting a few staff members hired, starting to reach out to families that are impacted by the assignment, have some welcome and community events, and then also start to develop the curriculum. In some cases, have a little bit of input on mascots, all those things that really go with the excitement of opening a new school. And that also allows families that are assigned into those new schools to start to build those relationships with that leadership team. As far as teachers and other types of staff members that go into a school building, they'll have a little bit of an advanced priority to be able to hire some of their staff members a little earlier than some of the other schools that are just continuing and maybe looking for a couple of transfer teachers. And so they do get some priority there. And there's also an ability, if usually a veteran principal is named, that they can bring a certain percentage of staff with them from their current school, if it's appropriate, to help, again, maintain a mixture of both veteran teachers, new teachers, just like any school in the district would have. So you're not to worry that all of the teachers will be young, brand new teachers without experience. It'll be a good combination of both veteran teachers and new teachers, just like any school in the district would have.
A common question we frequently receive is, how do you determine if a school is going to open traditional or year-round?
Okay, sure. So at the elementary school level, this is particularly poignant. In the modern era, so the last 3 to 7 years, staff from a long-range planning standpoint has really recommended that the board consider opening all new elementary schools on a multi-track year-round calendar to support all that growth that we talked about during the forecast portion of our presentation. It's a more cost-effective way to add capacity to a school without having to increase construction costs. And it does give those schools that ability to flex as new enrollment is coming into the school. However, once those proposals are made, the board then weighs community feedback as well to determine if it's an appropriate fit. So by way of example, for the 25-26 school year, there are 3 new elementary schools opening, and the board did determine that they would approve multi-track year-round for 2 of those schools, but they did approve one as traditional because it was located on the same campus as an existing middle school that also operates on a traditional calendar. So they do take those types of community aspects into consideration when making a final decision. At the middle school level and the high school level, honestly, we haven't opened a middle school in quite some time, so it'll be a lot of back and forth on that, whether or not we need the capacity. So if it's in a high growth area where we need the extra capacity, we certainly, from a staff perspective, a long range planning perspective, might recommend a multi-track year round. If it's opening in an area where there's already sufficient capacity, we might recommend traditional. At the high school level, we are going to consistently recommend that the high schools open on a traditional calendar. There's lots of academic and extracurricular reasons for that. Operating a high school on a multi-track year-round calendar is just not something the district has entertained in recent years because of those complicating factors that would negatively impact student academic access, as well as some negative impacts to extracurricular processes for high school kids.
What are the current thoughts that go into deciding who's going to be assigned to a new school? And separately, when do folks know that that's going to happen?
So when we're looking specifically at the opening of a new school, we're going to be looking, of course, at those pillars that we presented earlier. So proximity is one of those. Wherever we can allow students to have a safe walking path to school, what sometimes we refer to as a no transportation zone, we certainly would want to try to take advantage of that. If we can reduce our reliance on buses to get students to and from school, that's a win for both families and for the district. In addition, we're looking at neighboring schools that are already experiencing crowding or overcrowding or even capping from that level of crowding to determine if we can relieve those situations for those schools. And then finally, we're looking at those balances of student achievement as well as overall stability of assignment for families. So for example, in some of our high growth areas, we've opened a number of elementary schools sort of year after year after year. So we do look to make sure that we're not reassigning the same neighborhood multiple times in a short time period, if at all possible, give those families some stability. So we're really going to start operationally from a proximity standpoint. We're going to look for that stability element for families that are in high growth areas that maybe have been impacted by the opening of multiple schools. We're going to look at the student achievement factors that are outlined. And of course, that operational efficiency piece from a transportation standpoint. Can we get students to schools that are relatively close to home or get them, on a shorter transportation commute if at all possible? Are there any questions about existing schools that we're receiving? Because I know we've got some crowding throughout the district that we're concerned about.
We had one come in. What are the current plans being considered for White Oak Elementary?
Well, that's a great example. I think I've said capped several times in today's presentation. So White Oak is an elementary school that is currently capped and capping. I like to make that distinction between the noun and the verb. Some of our schools have a cap, yet haven't hit that enrollment cap, meaning they haven't actually enrolled a number of students to get up to that total maximum number of enrollment. And so while they're capped, the only students that can enroll in those schools are students who reside in the base attendance area. Schools that are actually capping, meaning they have that cap and they've hit that enrollment number, they've actually hit or exceeded that enrollment number, have to start then designating the next families to enroll would need to be sent to an overflow school. And so White Oak is in that second category. Not only does it have a cap, it's in a high growth area, so it is capping students out to a designated overflow school. It's also in an area where there's at least one, if not two, elementary schools that are currently not at their maximum capacity. And so there are some considerations to determine whether, and we talked about this in step 6 of the planning process, for a school like White Oak, and there's others in the district, but we'll use this one as an example, would changing the calendar of the school and making it multi-track year-round help with the capacity needs for that campus? Or would that be unfavorable in the community? It is an existing school that's been operating on a traditional calendar for a number of years. Would it be better to maybe look at neighboring schools that have some extra space and see if we can't do a reassignment to alleviate crowding at the school and maybe reduce the pressure on that school? So yes, we are looking specifically at schools like White Oak to determine if an assignment or a change in assignment could help alleviate that cap. Keep in mind, for existing schools, the board in recent history, and we don't see them changing from this pattern, have authorized really generous stability rules when the schools are already open and we're not trying to open or fill a new school. So in this case, if we were to make a recommendation for some portion of the White Oak attendance area to be assigned to a different elementary school to provide some relief and maybe take advantage of available capacity at a nearby school, right now, we would see that the board would most likely support the recommendation to allow all students in all grades that are already attending the school to be able to stay there and finish out through the end of 5th grade. And it would just be the new families moving into those address areas that would be impacted by the assignment and need to go to the new school. It's a lot of, that can make a lot of people anxious, all the things I just said. I recognize changing the calendar of a school or even changing the assignment area of a school can really be of concern, particularly for a current student. So hopefully knowing that the board has consistently supported our recommendation to allow all existing students to remain provides a little bit of assurance that even if an assignment change is made, individual families wouldn't necessarily have to change schools. But yes, we are looking in that area to see if there's anything we can do through assignment to help relieve that crowding. And it's not the only one. There are several districts. I mentioned a couple of slides back that we've got 22 schools that currently have a cap. And so we're looking at any of those to determine if reassignments would be helpful or if changing calendars would be better.
So at the moment, that covers the questions that have been provided to us to answer, at least for this evening.
Okay. And I'll just, for those of you that are watching still, and for anyone who watches the recording later, we are maintaining a list of frequently asked questions on that assignment planning website. So let me go ahead and fast forward there. So that the website that we've been showing throughout today's presentation. So if you have a question that you think of later, it may have already been captured in a previous session. So please do continuously visit the assignment planning website over the next several months to see if your question's there. If it's not, you're welcome to add it to the thought exchange. The benefit of putting questions and ideas and thoughts into the thought exchange is twofold. One, it's publicly accessible, so other members of the community can see it and participate and rate your comments and thoughts. Two, it's available to our board. They can see every single thought and every single comment that's posted. So it's that public comment capture tool. And then from a staff perspective, we can then cull or curate or dig through, if you will, all of the thoughts that we're getting in the thought exchange to see if any new questions are popping up that we haven't previously addressed. And we'll also use those to update our website and the frequently asked questions section. So I'll let you close us out.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that the session has been informative and that you better understand the overall enrollment planning process. Separately, we appreciate your honest and open participation. Your input and your feedback are vital in informing the development of the next enrollment plan. Remember, we will present a summary of the feedback received to the board during a work session in June. The thought exchange will remain open through July 31, and we encourage you to participate by posting comments, rating comments, and exploring the exchange over the next few months. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we hope you enjoy the remainder of your evening.
Thank you so much, everyone.